Good afternoon, and welcome to a celebration of Judge Homer Drake's service to the Bankruptcy Court for the Northern District of Georgia. As you may know, Judge Drake has served this district for over 53 years. He began as a law clerk. He then was appointed as a bankruptcy referee in 1964. In 1979, he became a bankruptcy judge, and he held that position for over 30 years. Even after he retired, he served another 11 years as a recall judge, handling all of the cases for the Noonan Division in the Northern District of Georgia. Now, ordinarily, an event like this would be held in Atlanta in the ceremonial courtroom, but it is the year of the pandemic, and so instead we're celebrating virtually, and we are so glad that you have joined us today. Judge Drake, I want to assure you that this video could have been a whole lot longer than it is because there are so many people and organizations that you have impacted. Some of your impacts have been public and well known, but there are others that are more personal. You may not realize how much your interest in the members of the bar has meant to all of us. You have counseled so many of us, whether it be through practice pointers or career guidance. Your well-timed suggestions and thoughts have always been right on the mark. And frankly, just the fact you thought of us engendered confidence and gave us confidence to increase our abilities beyond what we thought we could do. And so for that, we are very, very thankful to you. So today we look forward to celebrating you and celebrating with you. You will hear from many of the people and organizations that you have impacted. You will hear from your present and former judicial colleagues here in the Northern District of Georgia. You will hear from representatives of many of the organizations that you have impacted. You will hear from some of your former judicial law clerks, as well as members of the bar. And finally, you will hear from the Noonanites themselves. We hope that you enjoy these messages. But first, we are honored to hear from representatives from the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals and the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Georgia.
Welcome to the United States Bankruptcy Court for the Northern District of Georgia for the purpose of honoring the Honorable W. Homer Drake, Jr. and recognizing his countless contributions to this court and the bankruptcy system. All persons having business before this court draw near. Give your attention and you shall be heard. God save the United States and this honorable court. Congratulations, Judge Drake, on your upcoming retirement. I wish you nothing but the best. You have served this court well with integrity and dignity throughout the years. And on a personal note, I'd just like to say thank you for your support of me throughout the years as your sheriff in Coweta County, and also support as the United States Marshal. I wish you the very best, but most of all, Judge, I thank you for your friendship throughout the years. Take care and enjoy retirement.
Judge Drake, it's Beverly Martin. I'm so sorry we can't all be together to celebrate this transition in your career, but I wanted to do my part to pay tribute and thank you for all you've done for the courts to make us all look better and for our country. We all think so much of you and wish you well in your next adventure.
I'm Judge Batten, and I am a district judge in Atlanta and in Noonan. I have been in Noonan since 2011, and it has been my high privilege to become a close friend with Judge Homer Drake. He is my favorite person in Noonan. He is a great man and a great judge. We are really going to miss him. I've had a lot of great time with Homer. He's just so sweet. He's also a little more humorous than a lot of people may realize. He knows that when we walk around town, and I'm not from Noonan and don't know anybody, that all the people we run into who say hello to him, they all think I'm his law clerk. And he's done nothing to disabuse them of that notion, but I've had my own way of getting back at him, like reversing some of his orders. I don't really reverse Judge Drake, to be honest with you. He's one of the all-time preeminent bankruptcy judges in the United States. He started the Southeastern Bankruptcy Law Institute, and there's an Inn of Court named after him. The extent of my bankruptcy law knowledge is that Chapter 7 is when you're totally broke. Chapter 11 is when you really aren't doing well, but you're trying to make it happen anyway. And Chapter 13 is for wage earners. I've just exhausted my bankruptcy law knowledge. I have a rubber stamp in my desk that says affirmed, and I use it for all of Judge Drake's orders that get appealed to me. One of the things that's so impressive about Judge Drake is how much lawyers and judges respect him. When I was a lawyer in Atlanta, I actually did appear before him a few times, and not only from that experience, but also my experience as a judge, I know lawyers never go to his courtroom unprepared. And it's not because they're scared that he'll be ugly or mean, because he doesn't know how to do that. It's because they respect him so much that it would be an affront to the court, to the whole legal system, to come to Judge Drake's courtroom unprepared. He's that kind of a man. He's been a great family man. He's been a great mentor to me. We share a lot of the same views on politics, and like I said, he's become my best friend in Noonan. I am really going to miss you, Homer. You are one of my favorite people ever. I love you, and I wish you the very best in all of your retirement. God bless.
When I began practicing law in Atlanta, I quickly learned that I wanted my cases to be in Noonan. I thought it might be so that the lawyers could go to Sprayberry's for lunch, but the fact that Judge Drake would hear the case probably also had something to do with it. Judge Drake still thinks I had a client rent a post office box in Peachtree City, but he's wrong. I had my client rent an office. The reasons that lawyers wanted Judge Drake to handle their cases are the things I learned from him about being a good judge. It wasn't just that he had a command of applicable law and procedure. It wasn't just that he was unfailingly courteous and treated all lawyers and parties with dignity and respect, whether the party was an individual struggling to pay debts or keep a house, or a multi-million-dollar company. It wasn't just that because of his thorough preparation. Hearings before him quickly turned to consideration of the critical and dispositive issues. Most important, Judge Drake was always responsive to the needs of the case and the parties in it. Lawyers could expect that routine things would be handled routinely, that emergency matters would be promptly heard after appropriate notice, and that disputes that the parties could not resolve would receive a full and fair hearing and a prompt resolution based on an accurate assessment of the facts and careful analysis of applicable law. Especially when I first took the bench, I routinely asked myself, what would Judge Drake do? I'm sure I didn't get it right all of the time, and it's likely that Judge Drake has been dismayed at some of what I have done. Homer, like all of the other judges in this district and across the country, I will miss your physical presence after over 50 years as a bankruptcy judge. But your teaching, wise counsel, and influence as a role model for us will remain. And I will continue to ask myself, what would Homer do?
Homer, I've been asked to talk about what you taught me about being a judge. And my first thought was a far better question is, what didn't you teach me? Because in truth, you taught me everything. Perhaps the most important thing is that a judge controls the courtroom by being firm, but patient and calm. When I think of my almost 30 years of appearing before you, my most consistent memory is that from the moment you walked into the courtroom and took the bench, you had the full attention of everyone in attendance. There was never any talking among lawyers. Lawyers did not talk over each other. No one interrupted anyone, let alone the judge. No one wanted to see that stern look from you as a rebuke. At the same time, you were patient, particularly with young lawyers such as I was at the time. You never raised your voice or sounded irritated. You gave calm guidance. Homer, congratulations on a well-deserved retirement, and thank you for all you have done for me and the bankruptcy community, locally and nationally.
Homer, I have learned so much from you about being a bankruptcy judge. You know, your portrait hangs here in my courtroom, and sometimes I just have to glance over at it for some inspiration. But there are two things in particular that stick out in my mind that I've learned from you. First is the importance of letting people know when they've done a good job, particularly the practitioners who practice before you, and to encourage them in their career, because that's what you did for me. And had you not done that, I may not be a judge today, so thank you. The second thing that I've learned from you is the importance to the bankruptcy system that we are bankruptcy judges and not bankruptcy administrators. And for that, we have you and your colleagues to thank. You all worked tirelessly in the 70s leading up to the enactment of the 1978 Bankruptcy Code, which created the possibility of being a judge. And now it is up to us to continue to rise to the responsibility of and challenge of being a judge. And thank goodness we have your example to follow. And so for that and many, many other things, we thank you for your time and your service to the Northern District of Georgia, and we will certainly miss you.
I had the privilege of practicing in front of Judge Drake as a lawyer for 24 years before I became a colleague of his as a judge for the last 10 years. Over that time period, one of the things that always struck me about Judge Drake was he had great judicial temperament. He was always practical, thoughtful, very patient. And even during the first 7 years of my career, when I was appearing both consumer cases as well as commercial cases, he had that same temperament, regardless of what type of case it was. And that is something that I've taken with me as I became a judge.
In thinking about the question of what I have learned from Homer about being a judge, I think back to some of the matters that he heard while I was in practice. Homer was always cordial and prepared. I recall one event most vividly. We filed the case early in the morning and had first days scheduled later in the afternoon. The case was inadvertently filed as an Atlanta case. In our haste to make sure the case was filed and notice given, we also filed it in Noonan. In the afternoon in Noonan, we found ourselves on a conference call with Judge Cotton and Homer discussing our error in judgment in filing the case twice. After a learning experience about not panicking, all was resolved with good humor. The case remained in Noonan, but not until Homer taught us all a bit about grace and patience. I hope I am able to exhibit these qualities as Homer has always done. I always very much enjoyed appearing in Noonan, and it has been a true honor to be your colleague.
I've had the distinct honor and pleasure of serving on the bench of this district with Judge Drake for 5.5 years. I was also honored to serve in 2019-2020 as the president of the W. Homer Drake Bankruptcy Inn of Court, named for Judge Drake in honor of his decades of service to the American bankruptcy system and the Northern District of Georgia. It is that service to our country, to its constitutionally grounded bankruptcy system, and to the local bankruptcy bench and bar that are things that I hope I have learned from Judge Drake. He was instrumental in developing our current bankruptcy system and code, and has encouraged me and others not to take any of it for granted. Being a bankruptcy judge is often referred to by those who have the position, for a myriad of reasons, as the best job in the world. It is thanks to Judge Drake and a small group of his contemporaries that it is so. I have learned from and heard from Judge Drake that it's our job to make sure it remains so. I also learned from the way Judge Drake has handled being a bankruptcy judge in Noonan, a job that Judge Richie Craig and I will soon take over, that being deeply involved in the community is vitally important. Although we cannot possibly be to Noonan what Judge Drake has been over his many years of service, we will do our very best to keep the bench engaged with the bar and with the local community.
There's not enough time for me to share all that you have taught me about being a good judge, so I will limit my remarks to a David Letterman-style top 10 list. Number 10, the court does not give gifts, it grants relief. Number 9, number of words matters. Say it in as few words as possible. Number 8, don't substitute anyone else's judgment for your own. Number 7, respect of and to others is always non-negotiable. Number 6, lunch at Sprayberry's or Redneck is a great way to divide your day. Number 5, football is the universal language. Number 4, our love for Mercer is steadfast and devout. Number 3, that in-person hearings are much more fun than virtual hearings. Number 2, that a stellar law clerk is vital to one's success on the bench. And number 1, how one obtains that stellar law clerk is truly negotiable. President John F. Kennedy once said, "As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to simply utter the words, but to live by them." I will always remember the many lessons I have learned and will employ them and live by them as you have taught me. I am truly and forever thankful to you, my friend, Judge Drake.
Judge Drake, it seemed like just yesterday that I met you for the very first time. The year was 1995, and Charles Campbell and I met with you in your chambers shortly after we filed the Sewell Manufacturing Company case. And you taught what was then a very young lawyer a valuable lesson, that the little details matter. I had worked very hard in preparing the first day pleadings in the case, but I failed in one key respect. Every order to be entered that day had your name as Homer W. Drake, Jr., as opposed to W. Homer Drake, Jr. You pointed out the error to me in the kindest way possible, and I am reminded of that day often, as lawyers have a hard time getting my name spelled correctly on the orders they present to me. I witnessed in the Sewell Manufacturing Company case, and in every case I appeared before you, a judge who was always prepared, a judge who always ruled fairly, and a judge who always ruled promptly after the matter was concluded. I only hope that I can do the same in my years on the bench. I wish you all the very best in retirement. God bless.
I have known and admired Judge Drake since the very beginning of my career as a law clerk for Judge Deal. Judge Drake generously invited me and my co-clerks to Noonan for a visit. We had lunch at Sprayberry's, of course, and took a tour of the town. I learned a little about the history of Noonan and saw a lot of its beautiful homes. But mostly, Judge Drake talked about the history of the Bankruptcy Act becoming the Bankruptcy Code and bankruptcy referees becoming bankruptcy judges. Learning that history always really bolstered the importance of this position for me. I also really admired the way that Judge Drake interacted with every single person we came into contact with that day. From the marshals in the courthouse to attorneys we met on the sidewalk and servers in the restaurant, Judge Drake was approachable and kind, but professional to the core. And that is something I strive for every day. I wish that I had had more time on the bench alongside Judge Drake as a colleague. But Judge Drake, I am so grateful for all of the guidance that you've given me throughout the course of my career.
Paul, these are comments and recollections of mine, beginning with regard to Judge Drake's retirement. It was 1964 and I was there. I was able to practice for him immediately. The appointment was for Judge W. Homer Drake. He was appointed for the Bankruptcy Court in Atlanta, and though his title was referee, quote unquote, he wasted no time making changes. The Bankruptcy Court would not defer to non-federal courts, and he made that plain to all of the lawyers practicing there. Cases were to be heard at the time they were scheduled, and attorneys were required to be present to represent their clients. Continuance were not granted by calling up a secretary and asking for a continuance. Only the judge could grant continuances. Attorney-lawyer conferences and/or negotiation with other attorneys could not take place in the courtroom while court was in session, but had to be moved into the hallway in order to allow the court proceedings to go forward uninterrupted. The Chapter 13 program was completely in disarray and not working at all, really. Judge Drake immediately appointed a new Chapter 13 trustee, and he started requiring debtors to start making payments immediately to the Chapter 13 trustee. and the trustee was able to begin making timely payments to creditors once the cases were affirmed. During the years forward into the late 60s, early 70s, Judge Drake saw that there was a great need for more lawyers trained in bankruptcy law and practice. He began exploring his ideas of the creation of a bankruptcy institute to train lawyers in bankruptcy law and practice. In the early 70s, 1970s, there was a real estate collapse and recession of significant portions, and it gave emphasis to the need for more experienced lawyers. As a result, he brought together a group of about 30 or 35 attorneys who came together and established the Southeastern Bankruptcy Law Institute for the purpose of teaching lawyers in the practice of bankruptcy law and the law itself. The Institute was finally able to schedule a conference for early 1975. The Institute brought in both judges, lawyers, professors, and other persons who had great familiarity and experience in bankruptcy law and practice. The Institute was able to draw in excess of 400 attendees for the first Institute seminar, which took place in March of 1974. The 400 plus attendees were enthusiastic with regard to what they were hearing. After the first day of the Institute, I was having breakfast with a couple of the lawyers from one of the major law firms in Atlanta. And they'd informed me that the day before they had a session, that they began noticing other lawyers from their law firm and began counting the number that was present. They said that they actually counted 20 or 22 members of the firm that they had no idea were there, and that there probably were some others that they missed simply because they were in breakout sessions and they just didn't see them. The seminar was held in March of 1975, and it had enormous turnout and a great reception from those who attended it. The conversations with the people in many instances indicated that they were seeing and hearing things that they needed to know. There were actually some who declared that the presentations actually answered the questions that of particular cases that they had, and would be able to use when they got back to their home courts. The conference was a tremendous success. As a result, the Institute's program continued to flourish, and for the next 10 years, the attendance for the seminar each year continued to rise, and in the 10th year, it was had grown to approximately 1,300 attendees. And it has flourished ever since, and is still in operation to the best of my knowledge. It was clearly the inspiration of Judge Drake. It was a personal triumph and accomplishment both for him and for all the lawyers who then and subsequently have had a hand in this enormous undertaking and we're all the better for it. The court is certainly the better for it. Bankruptcy bar is the better for it. And it is a great compliment, in my judgment and record, for Judge Drake that we all know of and appreciate. And I wish him the very best in his retirement.
Homer, John and I want to wish you a very happy and wonderful and such a well-deserved retirement. Thank you for being the face and the personification of the bankruptcy judiciary for more than half a century. You and your experience and your wisdom and your and Ruth's incredible hospitality to all of us for so many years added the warmth and collegiality to this group that made it so special. It was an honor to serve with you and our other terrific colleagues. So as soon as Corona is over, I'm going to get with Judge Bonifel. We're going to plan a proper lunch in Noonan to honor your magnificent judicial career. But in the meantime, lots of health and happiness and mwah.
Judge Drake, I'm delighted to join with many others to express our deep appreciation for you as you prepare to leave the bench. You have been an icon on our court, displaying the best qualities of a truly great judge. I'm honored to have been your colleague, and I want you to know from the bottom of my heart how much I appreciate all you have done for me over my career. So Homer, after 50 plus years of law, you have chosen to make a fresh start. You're going to love it. We have a lot of barbecue to eat at Sprayberry's, and next time I'm paying.
My name is Ezra Cohen, and I have practiced bankruptcy law in Atlanta for decades, beginning in the 1970s. And indeed, in the 1970s, I had the high honor of sitting on the bankruptcy bench in the seat of Judge Drake when he spent a few years in the private practice. You know, Judge Drake really almost single-handedly created the bankruptcy practice here in Atlanta. First, he established a dignified and respected bankruptcy court, and then he went out and created a expanded bankruptcy bar to practice in his bankruptcy court, and then he established the Southeastern Bankruptcy Law Institute to educate this new expanded bankruptcy bar. And then nationally, he joined with a group of prominent bankruptcy judges and urged Congress to junk the antiquated Bankruptcy Act and to pass the new bankruptcy code that came into effect in 1978. But rather than talk about Judge Drake's accomplishments, I'd like to talk about a remark that his colleague and friend, Judge Kahn, made about him some years ago. Many of you may remember Judge Kahn. He was a bankruptcy judge from the 1960s to approximately 2000 when he retired. He was a very dear friend of Judge Drake. And that always amazed me because their personalities were so different. You know, Judge Drake is courteous, gentlemanly, dignified, warm. Judge Kahn was irreverent, outspoken, outrageous, and often a little hilarious. but still they were great friends. And Judge Kahn also had a very unique quality in his ability to, uncanny ability to find the truth. For instance, when he'd ask you a question, if you tried to shade the truth one way or the other, he would instantly pick it up. You know, one time I was walking with Judge Kahn, I don't remember where, and we were talking, I don't remember about what, but the subject of Judge Drake must have come up, because I remember vividly Judge Kahn turning to me and saying, you know, Homer Drake does not have a prejudiced bone in his body. He's the most decent person I know. So that's the tribute that I'd like to offer to Judge Drake and to this audience. And I know that if his dear wife Ruth is looking down on us, she would be very gratified with the tributes to this great and decent man. Thank you.
I want to congratulate Judge Homer Drake upon his successful completion of a magnificent career as a member of our federal judiciary. Judge Drake, you have brought wisdom, you've brought discernment, you've brought tremendous integrity to your role as a judge, and no one could ever ask for more from a member of our judiciary. I also want to thank you for all you've done for your alma mater, Mercer University, and all that you continue to do for our great institution. We've been blessed throughout our history by great judges who have served as leaders on our Board of Trustees. I think of Judge William Augustus Boodle, who served as a chair of our board and then later was elected a life trustee at Mercer, which is the highest honor that our board can confer on one of their colleagues. Or Judge Griffin Bell, who likewise served as a chair of our Board of Trustees and then later was elected a life trustee. Judge, you stand alongside these other great judges as a former chair of Mercer's Board of Trustees, and then Judge Drake, you too have been elected a life trustee by your colleagues, the highest honor that they can confer on any of their fellow trustees. So I want to thank you for that. Judge Drake is probably best known for bringing college football back to Mercer during his tenure as chair of the board. The very first college football game played in Georgia was between Mercer University and the University of Georgia on June 30th, 1892. And Judge Drake saw to it that this great tradition returned to his alma mater during his tenure as board chair. As an expression of our gratitude for his leadership, the field house at our football stadium is named in his honor. It's named the Homer and Ruth Drake Field House as our way of expressing our gratitude for the role that he's played here at Mercer University. But he's meant a lot more to us than just his leadership role in connection with athletics. He's been a fervent supporter of our Southern Studies program at the university. He's been a tremendous supporter of the Mercer on Mission program, which is a program especially dear to my heart. And I'm grateful to Judge Drake for his assistance in making that program possible. Every now and then, someone special comes into your life, someone who becomes a special friend, a mentor, a colleague. Judge Drake, you've been all of those things to me. You're someone who's been a very special part of my life since I arrived at Mercer 15 years ago. And I just want to thank you, not only for what you've been as a great judge, not only for being a great leader here at Mercer, but also for being a great friend and mentor to me. Thank you, Judge.
I'm Mike Sabbath. I'm a professor at Mercer's Law School. I'm thankful for this opportunity to say how proud we are, the whole law school community, how very proud we are of our alum, Judge Homer Drake, for all that he's accomplished during his distinguished career. Also, I want to thank Judge Drake on behalf of the law school community for the support he's shown to the law school over these many years. Judge Drake always has provided generous financial support to the law school. In addition, the Southeastern Bankruptcy Law Institute, in honor of Judge Drake, established the SBLI Walter Homer Drake Jr. Endowed Chair in Bankruptcy Law, which I had the honor of occupying and which means a lot to the law school. But Judge Drake has helped in numerous other ways. He's helped with admissions. I always get to know the members of the incoming class, and I always run into several of them, often from the Noonan area, who said they chose to come to Mercer only after speaking to Judge Drake and his talking about how wonderful the law school is. They say he can be very, very persuasive. Judge Drake has also helped us with career placement. He has hired numerous law school grads who have clerked for him and after being trained by Judge Drake have gone on to have very distinguished careers of their own. But maybe most importantly, Judge Drake has been a wonderful ambassador for the law school. Whether dressed casually, wearing a Mercer baseball cap and an orange Mercer sweater, or dressed more formally with his Mercer tie, Judge Drake lets everybody know that he's a double bear, that he went to Mercer undergrad and came to Mercer Law School, and what a wonderful experience he had here, and what a wonderful legal education he got. And coming from a man like Homer Drake, that really means a lot to the law school. On a more personal note, I've had the opportunity to get to know not just Judge Drake, but his entire family. His son Taylor was actually my student here at the law school, his son Walter, and his wonderful wife Ruth, who was always so warm and gracious to me and my wife Lisa. Getting to know that family has meant so much to me. In any event, Judge, you're retiring. I'm happy for you. You haven't seen the last of me. I still plan, when this miserable pandemic is over, to come up to Noonan to have lunch with you, hopefully at Sprayberry's. But we have to agree that now that you're retired, you'll let me pay for lunch once in a while. You've bought me way too many lunches over the years. So that's going to be our agreement. I really do look forward to seeing you again when we can get together, and best of luck to you.
To Judge Drake, from Ira Gingold, on the occasion of your retirement, Judge Lisa Ritchie Craig asked me to address your contributions to the SBLI in 2 minutes. That's really impossible, since the SBLI is synonymous with you. You have provided guidance and oversight to the SBLI members. Your contributions are tremendous and everlasting. From the start, you set out to found the premier bankruptcy seminar in the U.S. You brought in your friends as faculty and allowed the board to assist you. You taught us that our law firms could avoid competition if we were not allowed to be speakers. As officers, we were always steered by you to avoid conflicts. Through SBLI, you have educated thousands of lawyers and provided Atlanta as the main gathering place for us. Even though you were the commanding figure in SBLI, you let us spread our wings so successfully, and for that we thank you. For a half a century, you've been my judge, my mentor, and my friend. We first met in court when you had to attend Section 341 meetings. You asked if I would be your trustee, and I officially became a Drake trustee. When we exercised at the Downtown Y, you said that I should be in the SBLI. I happily agreed. We have shared many good times, life events, seminars, discussions about books, and many meals together. I've always appreciated the friendship between our two families. I even got to see your appellate court Ruth in action. Luckily, I don't have to say goodbye, but merely thank you for all that you have contributed to the court, SBLI, and our friendship.
Good afternoon. I am so very pleased to have been asked to participate in today's events. Judge Drake's legacy in the world of bankruptcy is well known to everyone. Simply put, his tenure on the bench and his service to our country and to our profession have been extraordinary. Over many years and in many ways, Judge Drake has worked tirelessly to improve the status, effectiveness, education, and quality of bankruptcy judges and of the members of the bar that practiced before him. But I submit that his finest and most long-lasting contribution was the genuine interest he took in those of us who had the good fortune to practice before him in Atlanta and in Newnan. I remember the first time he asked to see me in chambers after a hearing, as he said from the bench, on a matter unrelated to today's hearing. Over the years, that phrase became a kind of code for me and for others. It conveyed an invitation to visit and to chat, to ask of and talk about family, for the judge to check up on the well-being of the next generation of lawyers appearing before him, for him to teach, and for us to learn. And we learned about the importance of preparation and the importance of professionalism. But most of all, we learned about the value and virtue of civility and respect for others, both inside the courtroom and in all aspects of everyday life. Judge Drake, I genuinely thank you for that remarkable gift. I consider myself fortunate to count you both as a mentor and as a friend.
How do you sum up a long and distinguished career in the law? One that has spanned 64 years and has included service as a member of the JAG Corps, a judicial clerk, a private practitioner, and a judge for 53 years. Well, you might try to do it by highlighting the prolific entries on an impressive resume. A resume that is filled with honors, achievements, authorships, and public recognitions. Another approach would be to look at the character traits that make the man worthy of respect and admiration. I prefer this second approach. Most of us are familiar with Judge Drake's expansive resume, but what of the man? If asked to describe Judge Drake, I would use the following adjectives: kind, humble, sincere, understanding and empathetic, polite, calm and patient, wise, and a gentleman. Years ago, in a hotly contested day-long hearing, Judge Drake ultimately ruled against me. For years afterwards, he would invariably compliment my cross-examination in that case. It seemed as if he knew how difficult his ruling had been on my then fragile ego and wanted to balm those psychic wounds. Thanks, I would say to him, but my cross-examination was obviously not good enough, as you ruled against me. Yes, he replied with a smile, but you made it a close call. We may forget an entry or two on Judge Drake's resume, but we will always remember the man. That is the hallmark of a distinguished career and a life well lived. Congratulations, Judge Drake, on your retirement, and best wishes.
Brings me special pleasure to be able to congratulate Judge W. Homer Drake on his outstanding service to the bankruptcy community and to the country. I consider myself a very lucky man that our paths cross, and I was able to be a colleague and a friend of Judge Drake. I'd like to begin with maybe a strange way that our paths crossed that neither one of us knew, and that is when I was a partner at Kilpatrick and Cody. Came to Atlanta in 1987 and started practicing with the bankruptcy group there. I was fortunate enough to be involved in a lot of Chapter 11 cases all over the country, and was able to litigate using rules of federal rules of evidence, federal rules of bankruptcy procedure, with some of the finest jurists and lawyers in the country. So after I applied for the open bankruptcy position when Judge Robinson retired, I was fortunate enough to have the circuit appoint me, and I ran into one of the more senior retired partners after I was chosen, and he just bumped into me and said, "Well, Ray, congratulations, but I'm curious as to why you want to be a referee." And it was obvious that he didn't know the work that the Honorable W. Homer Drake and many of his colleagues had put in to change bankruptcy referees to bankruptcy judges, so that all I knew was the modern bankruptcy system that came in after the bankruptcy revisions in 1978. Little did I know at that time that one of the jurists that was at the forefront of those changes was Judge Drake. Judge Drake and a handful of his colleagues, assisted by counsel and a few practitioners, pushed through which most people would consider the best set of amendments to the bankruptcy code, and that is the 78 amendments that created bankruptcy judges, modern jurisdiction. But Judge Drake didn't stop there. He and others insisted that the newly appointed judges, not referees anymore, be called Your Honor and wear robes. And so while I was in practice in my formative years, that led to my decision to want to be a bankruptcy judge. Had it not been for the work of Judge Drake, I probably wouldn't have chose that path and would have missed out on a career capping experience to be able to work with some of the finest judges and people in the country. Also, Judge Drake, at the time, a lot of people don't know, he was the president of the National Conference of Bankruptcy Referees, and his work was ongoing to the bankruptcy code change in 78. So he was president when that conference was supposed to be in Atlanta, and by the time he and his colleagues had pushed through the 78 code, all of a sudden the National Conference of Bankruptcy Referees became the National Conference of Bankruptcy Judges, and he was obviously the president of that organization and worked tirelessly with the NCBJ to make it what it is today. And also using that platform to let all the judges know that how hard fought the changes were to upgrade the position. Fantastic pension, fantastic job, law clerks, the whole set of what we know today as the modern bankruptcy system. Judge Drake also, meanwhile, was a pioneer in the continuing legal education on the bankruptcy front. I know that before I moved to Atlanta and I started practicing bankruptcy, I went to a bankruptcy CLE that had about 100 folks, and that was considered an overwhelming number and a prestigious CLE with some big names. Well, when I came to Atlanta and attended the first Southeastern Bankruptcy Law Institutes in 87, 88, 89, Judge Drake had already formed the Southeastern Bankruptcy Law Institute and was drawing over 1,200 people to the Marriott Marquis in downtown Atlanta. They had to open all the ballrooms, and the biggest names in bankruptcy from all over the country would vie to speak. It was the premier CLE and of its time, and led to, I think, the following of other organizations that tried to use CLE. But Judge Drake had an unusual focus on it. He wanted to make sure that the local bankruptcy bar would be educated, to be exposed to the best teachers, best materials, and he always wanted the Atlanta bar to be a leading effort along with the judges, so that we'd have a system that all of us could be proud of. and we do. Also, just on a personal note, when I was traveling the country practicing bankruptcy before a lot of fantastic judges, I never ran into a single African-American bankruptcy judge. So when I was appointed in the circuit, I became the first African-American bankruptcy judge in the 11th Circuit. So there was a lot of trepidation on my part coming from Ohio, coming to the Deep South and taking this position. And one of the first judges I ran into was Judge Drake. I was sent down from representing Old Bank South to a relatively routine hearing in Noonan to announce a consent order of some type. But I got there early, and because I didn't want to get lost, didn't want to be late for my first court appearance, and probably was over an hour early. And then walks Judge Drake, who I hadn't met at the time, saw me outside the courtroom, asked who I was. I told him. He brought me in the chambers and basically gave me a history of bankruptcy in Atlanta, made me feel welcome to be a member of the bar, and subsequently had other cases before him and become to know him as a fantastic judge, learn the history, how much he meant to the bankruptcy system. But on a personal note, fine man, alleviated a lot of my concerns of coming into the position the way I did. He treated me like a respected colleague, like he had known me for years, ultimate respect. But again, if you know Homer Drake, you know that's not unusual. The Drake name in Noonan is very prominent. You see it on buildings, you see it on a football field. His dad was very prominent. Most people know him. When you go out to lunch with him, everybody knows Judge Drake. So between the work he did on a bankruptcy system and his name in Noonan, there are a lot of people that would go to their head. The work on a bench and the robes would make some judges get a little case of robitis. Not W. Homer Drake. Judge Drake is one of the most humble, down-to-earth, true, friendly people that I've ever met in my life. I consider myself lucky. Outside of my father, there are a handful of men that have made a major impact on my life and the respect that I have. And Judge Drake is in that rare, small number. So Judge Drake, thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your mentorship. It's meant a lot. It's meant a lot to me. It's been a lot to Beverly and my family, because you made my years on a bench so rewarding. And I just feel honored to call you my friend. I remember the times I was able to get away and get down to Noonan, and just you and I would spend mid-morning, early afternoon going to lunch and having conversations about many things. And I always treasure that friendship and treasure the way that you helped me understand what this job entailed and what a privilege it was to have it. You always were quick to alert us, all the new judges, that the progress made and the job that the bankruptcy judge position carried was something that shouldn't be taken for granted, and that if we weren't careful with it, things could slip back. The job could, be whittled away and go back to the referee days. And you always used to tell me that, Ray, you wouldn't want to go back to the referee days. And I just thank you for your leadership and your just generosity. And congratulations. Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Jim Frenzel, a retired insolvency lawyer here in Atlanta. When I first started practicing, I convinced my firm in North Carolina to send me to the first ever Southeastern Bankruptcy Law Institute here in Atlanta. And I've met for the first time Judge Drake, the founder of the Institute. The next year I got a phone call from Judge Drake, and I thought, uh-oh, what have I done? And he basically asked me to round up as many North Carolinians as possible and get them to come to the next institute, which I did. And as we all know, the SBLI continues through today. When I was chairman of the North Carolina Bankruptcy Section, we decided we needed a one-day seminar to improve the practice of bankruptcy law in North Carolina. So I invited Judge Drake and Morris Macy to be our first keynote speakers at that seminar. They did a bang-up job, and that
seminar continues as well through this day. And when later we've decided to form the first ever Georgia Bankruptcy American Inn of Court, there was no doubt about for whom the chapter should be named, and the W. Homer Drake Jr. Georgia Bankruptcy American Inn of Court was formed. The purpose of the American Inns of Court is to foster the professionalism, ethics, and competency of lawyers in the bankruptcy practice. And no one more exemplifies that by his life and career than Judge Drake. So finally, on behalf of all the lawyers, especially those of us in the Southeast who you have touched and taught over the years, we wish you a very happy and healthy retirement. And Your Honor, if you would allow me, I have just one last question, and that is, what took you so long?
I clerked for Judge Drake from 1981 to 1983, and of course it was transformational for me. Every day I was able to come in and see intellectual honesty and professional excellence at work. In addition, I was able to see how the judge interacted with his staff, which included his secretary, Barbara Clements at the time, me and his law clerk, and his courtroom deputy, as well as the debtors that came into court, the lawyers that came into court, and of course all the other judges. In addition to that, I was able to see how the judge interacted with Ruth, his wife, and Walter and Taylor, his sons, who were very young at that time, and learned quite a bit about how to conduct myself both professionally and personally. In addition, everything about Judge Drake was focused on mentoring others, whether it was being the first referee in bankruptcy to wear judicial robes, or his work in 1973 of getting the bankruptcy rules changed to stop calling them referees in bankruptcy and start calling them bankruptcy judges. The work on the Bankruptcy Reform Act of 1978 with Judge Joe Lee. His involvement, of course, in the creation of the Southeastern Bankruptcy Law Institute, and the fact that the W. Homer Drake Bankruptcy Inn of Court is named for him because the Inn of Court is focused on civility and professionalism, and Judge Drake lives those every single day, every waking minute that he has. Judge Drake, congratulations on a tremendous career of public service that began in 1964. You have earned, through hard work, and diligence, and leadership, the retirement that you're about to enter into. I wish you the best of luck and the best of health going forward with that, and of course I look forward to seeing you in the years to come.
Mentor, that is the first thing that I think of when my thoughts turn to Judge Drake. I was fortunate enough to have several mentors in my early law practice, but Judge Drake stands out from all of them, and he had the largest and longest impact on my life. Watching him work and interact with the other judges, particularly David Kahn, with lawyers, with Barbara Clements, the courthouse staff, and litigants and witnesses, set both an example and goals for me. In my law practice and in my life, I wanted to become firm, direct, polite to everyone, serious but tempered with good humor, prepared and practical in finding solutions. How far I advanced in reaching these goals is for others to determine, but Judge Drake set standards I was proud to try to live by. Judge Drake was also a career mentor to me and to others. From my first days as his law clerk, I watched other young lawyers and not so young members of the bar stop by to talk with him and ask for his advice. Sometimes he would let me in on the advice, or some of it without betraying any confidences, particularly if he thought it would be helpful to me. Other times, the door would close behind the judge and a more senior member of the bar. Even then, he would frequently later give me somewhat cryptic but nonetheless valuable insights into how the world works. He also created opportunities for me, a book contract, speaking engagements, introductions to David Butler of blessed memory and Jim Massey, my next mentors. Having been his law clerk was my principal credential and source of credibility with other lawyers for, the next 10 years of my law practice. I could go on, but I only have a minute, so thank you, Judge Drake, for me and for all the other lawyers that you have mentored.
I became Judge Drake's law clerk in 2001. By then, he was already a legend in the bankruptcy world, and I will admit, he was a little scary. If he's ever looked at you over the top of his glasses, you know what I mean. But I quickly came to know Judge Drake as a kind, funny, and patient teacher. And more importantly, I realized that he prioritized his family above everything else, and that he understood and supported me when I did so. Whenever I struggled with my own career decisions, he told me the story of why he returned to the bench after several years in private practice. He had realized that he was traveling too much, and he wanted to be more involved in his sons' lives. While I'm always amazed at what he has accomplished professionally, I'm so inspired by the love and dedication that he has poured into his beautiful family. They are truly his greatest legacy. Judge Drake, congratulations on your well-deserved retirement, and thank you for your support and friendship.
I served as Judge Drake's law clerk from 2015 to 2017, and those 2 years were some of the most crucial for my development as a lawyer and more generally as a person. No one can doubt the judge's colossal effect on the law, but what really stood out to me during those 2 years were his ability to make connections with people, to be serious without being stern, to be a friend and a mentor to so many. That's what I most wanted to emulate. The most fruitful parts of my clerkship were the hours sitting in his office or riding in the car or eating lunch at Sprayberry's or attending events with him. It was learning how the world works. A favorite anecdote of mine about Judge Drake is from one of my first times at SBLI, where I was talking with someone about my clerkship, and I said, it's an honor to be working with a judge like Judge Drake. And the person that I was talking to got very serious. I thought they were angry with me, and said, there is no judge like Judge Drake. I completely agree. Thank you, Judge Drake, for all you have done for all us clerks.
Judge Drake, congratulations on your retirement. I hope that you have a long and very healthy retirement period. My relationship with your family goes back to when I was graduating from Miss May's Playhouse Kindergarten, and I was tapped to play Mr. Drake, the superintendent of schools, in that presentation. Then I started doing bankruptcy work at the old courthouse in downtown Atlanta when you conducted the creditor meetings. Wow, it's been a long time. I wish you the best in your retirement. I'm not sure that I can handle doing bankruptcy court without you on the bench. You've always been a steady influence and always predictable in your rulings. Thanks for all the memories.
Hello. It was an honor to be invited to participate in these video tributes to you, Judge Drake, and it was my sincere pleasure to have been assigned to your courtroom beginning on my first day with the United States Trustee Program back in June of 1988. Dignity and decorum, clarity and consistency, preparedness and professionalism, these are hallmarks of your courtroom. You set high standards for attorney conduct and performance. I treasure the lessons I learned as an attorney assigned to your cases. You are irreplaceable, and I will miss you immensely. Farewell and enjoy your retirement.
Hello, Judge Drake. I just wanted to take a moment to say congratulations on your well-earned retirement. It has been both an honor and a pleasure to appear before you and to serve as the Chapter 13 trustee in your cases. I wish you a long, healthy, and happy retirement, and know that you will be greatly missed in the Northern District of Georgia, especially in Noonan. Noonan Court just won't be the same without you. Take care.
Hi, Homer. It's Gus.
Almost 50 years ago, I was a young lawyer working for Lipschutz Macy. My boss was Sam Zusman. I was about a month and a half out of wearing combat boots and carrying an M16 in Vietnam. I'd just gotten to the point where I could almost every time spell bankruptcy. Sam Zusman called me into his office. He said, I need you to go over to attend a hearing before Judge Drake and present some orders to him. I said, well, what kind of hearing is it? He said, well, it's just objections to claims, but nobody filed a response, so they're all defaults. So just go over there and make an appearance and tell Judge Drake what these are about and ask him to sign the orders. I said, okay. I said, now, Sam, you know this is my first appearance in the bankruptcy court. He said, yes, I know that. I said, so this is okay, don't worry about a thing, he said. So I go over to the bankruptcy court, you call the case, I make an appearance. I noticed that there were several people in the courtroom, seemed like maybe 10 or 12 people, but I didn't pay any attention. So you called the case and asked for appearances, and at least 10 or 12 people made appearances. They were all irate creditors who didn't much like the fact that we had objected to their claims. In any event, you looked at me, you looked at them, and you said, well, Mr. Small, I think you could probably work some of these out, so why don't we just take a break and you go out and talk to these creditors. And so you left the bench. I went out, and somehow I settled with about a dozen irate creditors. You came back on the bench. I said, Judge Drake, we have settled. I presented the orders, and you took them and you smiled, and I have never forgotten that. It was my first time in the bankruptcy court, the first judge I'd ever appeared before in the bankruptcy court. Judge Drake, you helped me not make too much of a fool out of myself 50 years ago. I hope I haven't made a fool of myself any other times. In any event, it has been an honor for me to appear before you all these years. And I hope you enjoy your retirement, your kids, and your grandchildren.
Homer, congratulations on your retirement. It's going to be a lot of fun. I wrote a little story about us, and it took place down in Jacksonville, Florida during a regular Georgia-Florida football game. And it was always known as the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. But this particular year, they banned liquor. So I remember we had discussed before we went to the games that I bring a flask with me. Well, I did, and I filled up the flask with some good Crown Royal, and I went across the hall to your room and handed you the flask, and you said, no, you wouldn't take the flask, that I must take it. Well, I put it in my sock, and we went to the game, and the four of us were going into the stadium together, and we gave our tickets up, and then you walked first, and you were waiting for us, and all of a sudden, when the three of us were coming through, the sheriff jumped out in front of us, made me put my hands up in the air, and stopped the ladies. He inspected their pocketbooks, and he frisked me all over, and then finally got to my ankle where he found the liquor, and he made me pour the liquor into the barrel, and lo and behold, we couldn't find you. And what happened was, I realized that when the sheriff made me put my hands in the air, that you ran, and we couldn't find you when we finally got in there, and lo and behold, there you were hiding behind the Coca-Cola stand.
I'm flattered to be asked to reflect a few minutes on my relationship with Judge Homer Drake. I first met Homer Drake when he was a lawyer with Arnold Golden and Gregory. I met him at the introduction of my brother John and Bob Steed, who overlapped with him in law school at Mercer. And we had many occasions to eat lunch together and become social friends. I have that relationship with Homer as Homer Drake. I then had a relationship with him as a judge on a referee on the bankruptcy court, and later as a judge on the bankruptcy court. And then later a third relationship with his relationship to Mercer University, our alma mater. My most memorable occasion of Judge Drake is watching him raise his sons, but perhaps more important for this occasion is my recollection of him in relationship to the bankruptcy world. Judge Drake was instrumental and probably one of the most driving forces behind the passage of the Bankruptcy Judges Bill that made judges out of referees. His devotion to that cause was limitless. It was unbelievable. He never, ever gave up hope in making it become a reality. And he was successful. I later watched him devote the same attention to the development of the SBLI. The SBLI was very material. My third relationship with him was with Mercer University. And although I was only peripherally involved in all of it, I had a great feeling for Judge Drake and his dedication. And I think if I could say the most memorable thing about him is he never, ever gave up. If he got behind a project, he got it done. That's my feeling about Judge Drake.
Judge, I remember well meeting you in 1966 when I arrived in Atlanta to clerk for Judge Griffin Bell. Both of us were single at the time, and I enjoyed our lunches and dinners together, and in particular, a visit to one of Senator Talmadge's barbecues. Later, you honored me by being in my wedding. When I joined Austin, Miller & Gaines in 1967 as a trial lawyer, you kept insisting that I practice bankruptcy law. Then, in 1971, you asked me to serve as the trustee of the Atlanta International Raceway in a Chapter 10 corporate reorganization. I could not resist. Later, you honored me by asking me to join the board of directors of the Southeastern Bankruptcy Law Institute, which you had founded. By 1981, I was practicing full-time in the bankruptcy area, thanks to you. You always had great advice for me to further my career. You suggested that I write articles, appear on seminars, and to serve as an adjunct professor at Emory Law School, all of which I did with great interest. You always stressed the importance of dedication, commitment, hard work, tolerance of others' beliefs, and respect for our profession. My life is just one of many lives that have been shaped by you. Judge, thank you for being my mentor, but more importantly, thank you for being my friend. I wish you all the best in your retirement from the bench.
Hello, Your Honor. I bring you salutations on behalf of the Noonan Division of the Georgia Northern Bankruptcy Court Clerk's Office. When I started working for the court 12 years ago, it was impressed upon me very early on how special the Noonan Division was simply because of the judge that sat in his chambers. I knew that this was true as soon as I was granted the opportunity to speak with you one-on-one. You impressed upon me the importance of the clerk's office. One story that stands out and is very dear to my heart is the one of your time as a professor. You made sure that your students understood how important it was to not only find the clerk's office, but to also develop a relationship with the people that work there. You said to me that an attorney's relationship and knowledge of the workings and the ins and outs of the clerk's office can help to better any counsel's career. I think this story speaks volumes of your humbleness and your ingenuity to ensure that all involved in the bankruptcy community work together. Because of you, the administration of the bankruptcy community stands on a solid foundation. So again, on behalf of the Noonan Division of the Clerk's Office, I would like to say thank you for all that you have done to ensure that our division, our district, the national bankruptcy community stands on solid ground. Congratulations, Your Honor, and as always, go Bears.
In September of 2012, the court honored Judge W. Homer Drake Jr. on the occasion of his 50th year of service to the federal judiciary. Now, more than 7 years later, we recognize this remarkable judge as he leaves the bench of the Northern District of Georgia. I have the honor of representing the current and former employees of the Northern District of Georgia Clerk's Office as we thank Judge Drake for all he has done for the court, its employees, and the bankruptcy community. It's impossible to measure just how many people Judge Drake has influenced during his remarkable career. Lawyers, law clerks, and certainly people seeking relief from financial difficulties in the bankruptcy court. But I'm not sure many people think of the hundreds of bankruptcy court employees who have served the Northern District of Georgia during his tenure. Judge Drake is a mentor and a confidant. He teaches lessons of kindness and respect by his everyday actions. He is revered and approachable at the same time, something few people can do. He follows up with staff about their families and their goals. He loves to share opinions about sports, especially Mercer, UGA, and any other SEC school. Talking with Judge Drake is always a learning experience and most definitely a pleasure. On a personal note, I knew who Judge Drake was before I knew him. My mother is a native of Noonan, Georgia, and my father attended Mercer Law School with the judge. So when this inexperienced lawyer made her first bankruptcy court appearance in his courtroom, I was nervous and in awe. When I made my last appearance as a practicing lawyer, about 1 month before I became clerk of this court, it was in the same courtroom before the same judge. I was no longer nervous, but I certainly was in awe. It's appropriate that my practicing career ended on the second floor of the Lewis Morgan Federal Building and United States Courthouse because so many of my career decisions and opportunities involved Judge Drake. Other than my father, no one has been more influential in my professional life. The current and former staff of the United States Bankruptcy Court have been blessed to witness and participate in Judge Drake's consequential life and career. It is my honor to invite Judge Drake to share a few comments on this very special occasion.
Thank you very much, Gina. For me to try to respond appropriately to the words I've just heard is truly impossible, for there are simply no expressions of gratitude and appreciation that would adequately convey to each of you my feelings at this time. I am humbled and deeply touched by this outpouring of genuine affection. More broadly, to think that my long years of service to the federal judiciary and to my country may have helped in being beneficial and meaningful in elevating the status of our bankruptcy courts, the judges of these courts, as well as the bankruptcy system in general, is comforting to me and is something of which I'm extremely proud. just to know that this court, the bankruptcy court, is now an integral and important component of the federal judiciary means a great deal to me, as I'm sure it does to all of you. I want all of you to know that I cherish the time I've been given to know and to interact with each of you. And I want to tell you what an incredible honor it has been for me to devote what talents I may have to the service of my country. Thank you all.